Epidemics of typhus, malaria, typhoid, smallpox, yellow fever, pneumonia, trench fever, Marquisian disease, and countless others ravaged the trenches and battlefields of the Great War. But they all pale in comparison to the most dreaded of them all, the Black Grail. Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, stands apart from the other lords of hell, who act mainly through their mortal followers. Instead, when he periodically gains supremacy in the bitter power struggles of the archfiends, he sends forth his deadliest curse. Infused with demonic essence from the bowels of the seventh layer of hell, where the putrid fortress of Beelzebub stands, spews forth a torrent of demonic hellflies, scorpions, locusts, and other infernal insects. The Hellgate opens, and a veritable tide wave of foulness emerges, flowing across the land at startling speed, consuming everything, and leaving indescribable horror in its wake. After 9 days, the insect swarm exhausts itself, devouring its own in its insatiable hunger. The Black Grail is indiscriminate in its hatred of all living things. Its infections can spread to virtually any living biological matter, which bursts forth with tumors, boils, and weeping pustules. Puddles and ponds of melted flesh were left in its wake, endless mouths left screaming in their agony. For the Black Grail destroys the body, but leaves the mind intact to suffer. The scientist priests of the church and the alchemists of the Sultanate fervently look for a way to inoculate their people against this foulest of diseases. But thus far, they are without success. The only answer is to burn the infected settlements with specially constructed flamethrower tanks that use holy anointing oil as the fuel for their weapons. But if this is not done, or the countermeasures are too late, what happens next is even worse. Bodies of men, horses, dogs, insects, and other animals of every kind that are infected by the Black Grail lurch to their feet, driven by a demonic will. Not living, not dead, they become vessels to spread the corruption of their master ever further, forming war bands that strive to find and infect life of any kind. They also gather things that mortals value, and bring this loot, as well as grisly trophies, to the feet of the idols of Beelzebub they erect. Thus, the cult of the Black Grail mocks the devotions of the faithful and their prayers. At the head of such warbands stand the Knights of the Order of the Fly, those most depraved men and women who willingly embrace the Black Grail, and whose devotion Beelzebub finds sufficient. They are granted weapons, armor, and equipment corrupted by the hand of the Archfiend in exchange for sacrifices brought to the altars of Beelzebub, which these warbands build wherever they go. objects of grisly horror, constructed from the remains of their victims, shaped into the form of monstrous flies. The polluting effect of the Black Grail is the gift of Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, spread by the insects bred by his own hand in the seventh layer of hell. It is a tidal wave of his foulness, in the form of demonic vermin, septicemia, tainted insects, plague and impurities that pollute both body and soul. Entire villages and towns are turned into half-living slush that bubbles on the ground. An agony of melted flesh, quivering and crying at the multitudinous diseases granted by the Lord of the Flies. Those caught by the Black Grail are still aware of the horrible fate that has befallen them. Specialized units of New Antioch and the Free State of Prussia are dedicated to responding to these outbreaks with heavy flamethrower tanks, using holy anointing oil as their fuel. But some victims of the Black Grail suffer a far worse fate. They are bestowed with the Black Honor by being melded with hellflies, growing into a grotesque winged insect made of bloated flesh. After this torturous metamorphosis, they take to air as heralds of Beelzebub, the winged squires and scouts of the Order of the Fly. Their vestigial human bodies are still conscious as they are slowly eaten from within to be used as fuel by the herald. All the while, their warped bodies fight for the glory of hell against their will. The heralds are the vanguard in any assault of the Black Grail, and the ear-numbing drone of their wings strikes terror in any defender, breaking their focus and sapping their willpower. Heralds wield discarded weapons, contaminated with horrible worms that churn through them, which in turn infect their victims. Each diseased bullet has sentience of its own, finding even the smallest chink in any armor, burrowing into the nervous system and liquefying the internal organs from within. When the tide of Black Grail comes, many mortals cry out to Beelzebub in their despair, hoping that the Lord of the Flies would spare them in exchange for worship and servitude. But their prayers fall on deaf ears, for the Prince of Gehenna hates all creation and only wishes to warp it into a form pleasing to him and hateful to God. But there are few mortals, exceedingly rare, who truly share the vision of Beelzebub and wish the world to end in a putrid, parasite-infested mass, eternally writhing in the throes of the endless plagues bestowed upon them by the Black Grail. Many of them are secret and highly skilled killers, men and women whose pleasure is to murder repeatedly, plying their craft in secret, wishing one day to do it openly. From amongst such twisted individuals, the most depraved are inducted into the ranks of the unholy Order of the Fly, known as plague knights. When the Black Grail comes, they come out calmly and welcome the wave of corruption. Not consumed by it, but rather warped into a cadaver-like creature, halfway between life and death. They retain sentience, intelligence, and a dim memory of their past lives, making them extremely useful at leading the Black Grail into the isolated farmsteads and remote settlements that might otherwise escape the clutches of Beelzebub. The more living creatures a plague knight can find and warp beyond recognition, the higher they will climb in the ranks of the Order of the Fly, and the greater favor they will find in the eyes of Beelzebub. Amongst their rank, there are 12 plague knights of great renown, made in mockery of paladins of the church, great champions of the fly. They dwell within Ekron, the city of Beelzebub, a place of such wilting horror that none dare to approach it, not even the mightiest of heretic lords. But sometimes the orders of their lord come to their ears, and then the mightiest of plague knights strike forth, following orders carried out by the deafening buzz of trillions of beating wings of hellflies. Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the Lord of the Flies is come down unto you, and he brings his scourge of wrath. The greatest threat that the Black Grail poses is not the foul, poisonous miasma that spreads its corruption, nor the clouds of diseased iron locusts and flies it unleashes, nor even the horrific half-living war bands that plague the land as a wasting disease ails the body. The Hegemons of the Black Grail are the final, most horrific evolution of Beelzebub's dark master plan for befouling creation to take vengeance against Yahweh. When the Black Grail is allowed to spread unchecked, then eventually enough living things will be tainted, and so many thralls, amalgams, heralds, and other blighted servants of the Lord of the Flies swarm in one place, they can become host to a hegemon of the Grail, a terrifying shadow of Beelzebub on earth. The metamorphosis begins with strangely beautiful chanting. The servants of the Grail call out to Beelzebub from their ruined mouths, singing plague hymns that give praise to his beautiful creations and petitioning him for aid. Thousands or even millions of innocents are sacrificed. Their bodies are cut open and their entrails arranged in a sprawling mandala of inscrutable and powerful sigils. The air grows thick like mud. Swarms of flies coalesce into strange and ominous symbols. A dreadful abscess forms in the sky, from which great bolts of diseased blood strike the tortured earth. the chanting servants of the Black Grail, still holding the living and suffering humans within the foulness of their bulk imprisoned, slowly march into the center of the mandala. In an agonizing ritual, they meld together into a putrid mound of colossal proportions. As the last vestiges of the human hosts melt away, this quivering mass transforms into a new and terrifying shape. If not destroyed by holy fire, then within 13 days, an armored titan crowned by a swarm of Beelzebub's winged children rises from the swarming mass of twisted flesh. Thus, a Hegemon of the Black Grail is born, a nightmare who walks the earth. The powers of a Hegemon are beyond those of any other creation of the Black Grail. It can extend the corrupting power of Beelzebub into graves and morgues, so that even in death, there is no escape or respite from the Lord of the Flies. In battle, the 100-foot monstrosity can challenge entire battalions of infantry and whole tank corps. It has the twisted and foul wisdom and genius of a lordly fallen angel. Thus far, only 2 Hegemons of the Black Grail have risen during the Great War. One was slain by Paladin Engalir, who tragically perished in the duel. Another was defeated by the living saint Joan of Arc during the Corpse Wars in the year 1429. The Church and the forces of New Antioch are determined never to let another Hegemon rise ever again. In the year of our Lord, 1429, after 66 years of bitter warfare, the great Hegemon of Beelzebub, Yesernia Rex, was finally brought down by the combined forces of the Church, led by the living saint Joan of Arc. The final cataclysmic battle of Valence saw the destruction of most of the forces of the Black Grail in mainland Europa, thus ending the Corpse Wars. Enraged by this defeat, the fury of Beelzebub knew no bounds. He had invested so much of the power of the Black Grail on the fallen Hegemon and his legions, that the hatred of the Lord of Flies turned on his failed followers. The Prince of Decay cursed his miserable progeny and cast them out of the Order of the Fly, dooming them to wander the earth, mourning for their lost Hegemon until time itself is no more. But not all members of the cult of the Black Grail that took part in the Corpse Wars suffered the same fate. From the city of Ekron, where the power of Beelzebub has always been at its greatest since the Elder Days, came the priests of the Black Grail, who acted as messengers and heralds to the Hegemon. Advisors sent by the Lord of the Flies himself to plot the conquest of the Church heartlands. They were part of the religious rather than the military hierarchy of the Black Grail, and as such, were bound to the Lord of the Flies directly. When the war was lost, these high-ranking servants of the cult and their personal guards broke through the faithful encirclement and turned south. Though victorious, the exhausted and decimated forces of France, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Crown of England decided not to pursue the last remnants of the seemingly broken foe. This mistake proved to be a costly one. Instead of fleeing toward heretic domains, the forces of Beelzebub stormed the city of Hegemon. The city had been fortified against just such an occasion, but it was betrayed from within. Hidden cultists of the Lord of the Flies opened the gates to the invaders at night, led by the traitorous cardinal of the city. His name is now struck from all records, but it is said that he had grown jealous of the supreme pontiff, wishing to be seated on the throne of Peter himself, but he had been denied. Humiliated, he sulked into the bishopric of Avignon to slowly plot his revenge. His time came when those followers of his who had joined the cult of Beelzebub in secret opened the gates and welcomed their conquerors. In a single night, the city was overrun and turned into the vilest den of pestilent corruption this side of the gates of hell. In mockery of the papal throne of Rome, the cult declared the opening of a cathedral of Beelzebub in the great palace of the once beautiful city, issuing a direct challenge to the Bishop of Rome for the spiritual leadership of the continent. The traitorous cardinal now declared himself the anti-pope, and since that dark day, he has sat on the seat, drowning in endless ceremonies to warped congregation flies, untold billions strong. In a revolting parody of the holy matrimony, this patriarch of Beelzebub married an enormous sow bloated with Grail's disease, defiling thus the grand chapel of Avignon. This union spawned the first missionaries of the Black Grail. These creatures are a mix of unclean beasts and the high clergy of the cult, filled with missionary zeal to convert mortals to their cause, with far greater autonomy and intellect than the soldiers of the Grail. These children of the Fly lead missionary war bands which the patriarch sends out to challenge the spiritual supremacy of God rather than conquer the lands, as is the duty of the Order of the Fly. After many torturous years under the rule of the cult, Avignon is now so ridden with the most virulent and unique strain of the Black Grail that its recovery seems to be a cause with no hope of success. The very earth is warped and teems with parasites and maggots, infested with the filth of Beelzebub, with trillions of eggs hatching each year to overwhelm the city with further decay. Every faithful force sent to raise the city has only succeeded in swelling the numbers of its monstrous inhabitants. as its would-be conquerors have succumbed to the power of the Black Grail, which never wanes in this accursed place. Thus, a policy of containment has been chosen instead, as the servants of Beelzebub do not pursue an open policy of expansion. Because of this, significant forces are kept around the hinterlands of Avignon, both to contain the corrupt preachers of Beelzebub from infiltrating Europa, and to stop those deranged men and women who wish to join the ranks of the cult of their own free will. The number of such deranged people is disturbingly high, despite the best efforts of the church. In revenge, the patriarch of Beelzebub sends out his own bands of missionaries to spread the ecstatic word of the Black Grail across the globe. On moonless nights, music like the buzzing of a million flies can be heard rolling over Avignon's decaying ramparts. Then, the deformed but silver-tongued missionaries lead plague almoners, swollen oblates, and thrall monks out of the gates, and engage in battle against those who refuse to receive the joyous tidings of the Lord of the Flies. Many are stopped by the ever-vigilant patrols, but some make it through the cordon, and their corruption becomes a seed from which new infestations of the Black Grail spring forth. Ekron, the city of Beelzebub. Even among the forbidding 66 domains ruled by the heretic warlords, Ekron stands apart. It is shunned by both the mortal followers of hell and the servants of the court. No place on earth mirrors the carnage and corruption of hell so closely as this putrescent city of Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. The king of gluttony was one of the first three of the most exalted angelic spirits to fall. Since those ancient days, when he was worshipped as Baal of Flies, a great god of the people known as Philistines, Ekron has been his stronghold, where the power of the Prince of Decay is at its most potent. Today, none are welcome here. Even the heretic legions pledged to the sin of gluttony keep their distance. They know full well that even in their fallen state, Beelzebub sees in them a glimpse of his hated father. Were they not created in his image? Are they not a reminder of his ancient ignominy when his mortal followers abandoned him? In the ancient past, Beelzebub coveted the Ark of the Covenant, seeking to claim it for himself. His servants captured the holiest of the relics in his great victory over the servants of God at the Battle of Ebenezer. Yet, though his mortal servants seized the Ark from the Hebrews, they dared not to bring it to his city, for Yahweh punished those who stole the symbol of his covenant. Plague afflicted the people of each town to which it was taken, and the Lord's hand was heavy. He brought devastation upon them and afflicted them with tumors. So terrifying was the Creator's affliction that the people of Ekron abandoned the orders of Beelzebub and voluntarily sent the Ark back to the chosen people. Humiliated and enraged beyond mortal measure, Beelzebub swore to never forget this disgrace. From that day on, he devoted himself to the corruption of all creation, vowing to despoil the world until all that lived would be subject to his will and absolute rule. Beelzebub stalked into his great citadel in the seventh circle of hell. Here he labored for the next 2,000 years to forge the crowning achievement of his dark genius, a plague of his own design. It would not only eclipse those his father sent to punish the Pharaoh, but mar and corrupt all creation. Never again would he trust mankind, so weak and easily bent to the will of the tyrant god. Long he labored, pouring much of his divine essence into his work. The Black Grail was unleashed upon the world in the Black Year of 1436. It brought the world to the brink of utter ruin. The newly established Order of the Fly raised the city of Ekron from the rubble, and the power of Beelzebub seeped through from the Hellgate of Jerusalem that was. It slithered for many miles, settling upon towers and walls, and streamed through the streets in a torrent of demonic hellflies, scorpions, locusts, and other infernal insects infested with the Black Grail. Ekron stands as the seat of Beelzebub's earthly power, where his worshippers assemble from across the world to offer tribute to the king of gluttony. Wherever the Black Grail spreads, and the Order of Fly raises its lord's standard, they seek offerings to bring back to the city. To the missionaries of the Black Grail, it is a realm of beauty and divine vision, a whispered promise of the world to come, in a place their hearts yearn to behold. To everyone else, it is a domain of abject horror, where a fate worse than hellfire awaits. After nearly 600 years under the ravages of the Black Grail, Ekron is a city of overflowing splendor and revolting decay. Entire temples, churches, mosques, pagodas, shrines, and altars from every corner of the world are scattered throughout the city, borne there by the hands of untold millions of Grail thralls. Amid streets seething with undead corruption stand wonders of art. Marble statues, elegant porphyry pillars, frescoes, and icons of gold studded with precious stones. Yet though they are worth the ransom of 1,000 kings, it is not their monetary value that interests Beelzebub. It is thought that the Lord of the Flies can tap into these objects of devotion, feeding on the power of adoration that still lingers in these monuments of faith. Like a parasite swelling upon its host until it is swollen to the point of bursting, he leeches the power of faith until he is so engorged with it that his great wings might once more carry him skyward to storm the gates of heaven. To make the religious objects more palatable and pleasing to their lord and master, the clergy of the fly conducts elaborate rites of desecration. Through complex rituals, they corrupt icons and holy places, transforming them into morsels, offerings to be devoured by his ravenous gluttony for worship and adulation. Yet, he will never be sated. Though he seeks to fill the terrible emptiness festering within him, his hunger can never truly be assuaged, no matter how much of creation he consumes. For what the Lord of the Flies hungers for, above all his other unnatural appetites, is the sole right to divine worship, a birthright he feels his father has usurped. In his mind, the natural order is for the parent to die so their offspring may rise in their place. And who more suited to take the throne of God than Beelzebub, the most gifted of his children? Thus, it is written in the tablets of Ekron, "Be not afraid, for behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be for all the people. For the black Grail has come."